The school day begins the way it always does at Bellhaven Elementary. Tiny coats get hung on low hooks. Lunchboxes slide into cubbies. 6-year-old Ivy Oyalaran holds her mother's hand in the hallway and says the word magnificent under her breath, the way she does when a morning feels bigger than she is. Her mother, Maren, kneels to tighten the Velcro on her shoe. Maren watches her daughter disappear into the classroom. She is not a woman who hovers. She has a drive across the county to a school district being audited for referral irregularities. On her dashboard, a thermos of black coffee and a leather binder with color-coded tabs. At 38, she has been a compliance investigator for 11 years. She has learned to read a school the way some people read a face. Inside the classroom, the teacher Colette Maren claps twice and announces a special visitor, a man from Clearwater Reptile Rescue Wheels in a blue plastic tote. Children lean forward on the ABC rug. Colette smiles with too many teeth and tells them bravery is a muscle and today they are all going to grow it together. Ivy pulls her stuffed giraffe Tuesday tighter into her lap. The man from the rescue lifts a small corn snake into the air. He explains it is harmless. He explains it is warm, not slimy. The children gasp and giggle. Some reach out. Ivy does not. She shrinks back into the rug and shakes her head the way her mother taught her to say no with her whole body. Colette sees it. Something tightens in her mouth. Colette crosses the rug. She crouches in front of Ivy with her hands on her knees and her voice pitched for an audience. She says everyone is going to touch the snake today because that is how we grow. She says Ivy is holding up the whole class. She says giraffes are brave. Ivy whispers that Tuesday is brave, not her. The room laughs. Colette does not. Colette picks up the snake herself. She walks it toward Ivy slowly. She says this is what brave looks like. She holds it closer. Ivy cries without sound. The handler from the rescue says quietly that it is okay, not every kid needs to. Colette cuts him off. She says in her classroom, every kid does. She pushes the snake toward Ivy's hand. Ivy wets her corduroy overalls in front of 22 classmates. A paraprofessional finally steps in. She carries Ivy to the bathroom, murmurs it is okay, strips her down, wraps her in the lost and found sweatpants from the nurse's office. Ivy does not speak. She does not cry anymore either. The paraprofessional is a woman named Doreen, and something in her stomach turns over as she rinses overalls in a metal sink. She has worked in this building 19 years. The call to Maren comes at 11:22. Not from the teacher, and not from the nurse, from Principal Harriet Velcourt herself. Harriet speaks in a voice like warm honey, full of concern for a family in a difficult season. She says Ivy has had an episode. She says the board will require a conversation. She says today, please, after pickup. She has already cleared the 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, Maren sits across the oak desk from Harriet Velcourt. Ivy is in the waiting area with Tuesday. Harriet slides a glossy brochure across. Clearwater Child Anxiety Solutions, it reads. Founded by Dr. Monica Velcourt, LMFT. Harriet says the district requires an exposure therapy program for children who disrupt instructional time. She says it is $4,000. She says it is non-negotiable. She smiles. Maren picks up the brochure. She reads it. She reads it twice. She notices the address is a strip mall suite 3 blocks from Harriet's home. She notices Dr. Monica Velcourt is credentialed in marriage and family therapy, not pediatric anxiety. She notices the brochure has no state licensing number. She notices all of this in the time it takes Harriet to uncross her ankles and recross them the other way. Harriet adds, almost as an afterthought, that if Ivy does not complete the program, the 2-week suspension becomes indefinite. She says with compliance, everyone wins. She uses the word compliance 3 times in 4 sentences. She does not know what Maren does for a living. Maren has not corrected the intake form. The intake form still says homemaker. Maren nods. She says she understands. She says Ivy will start the program on Monday. She asks very softly if she can get copies of the referral agreement, the suspension paperwork, the program enrollment form, and the district policy that authorizes the requirement. Harriet beams. Harriet says of course. Harriet does not yet hear the shape of that sentence. Harriet just hears a mother who is going to pay. In the car, Ivy sits in the booster seat, quiet, Tuesday in her lap. Maren looks at her in the rear view. She says in her calmest voice that none of what happened today was Ivy's fault. She says the grown-ups at that school broke something important, and grown-ups are going to fix it. She says Ivy does not have to touch any snake, any hand, or any brochure ever again. That night at the round oak table in the butter yellow kitchen, Maren opens her laptop. She starts a fresh document. She titles it in plain black letters, Bellhaven Elementary, Referral Flow Review. She does not write the principal's name yet. She writes dates. She writes dollar amounts. She writes the address of the strip mall. Then she calls Ivy over and paints watercolor giraffes for 45 minutes. Then she goes back to the laptop. On Monday morning, Maren drives Ivy to Clearwater Child Anxiety Solutions. The strip mall suite shares a wall with a tanning salon. Dr. Monica Velcourt greets them with the same lacquered bob as her sister-in-law. The intake form has no HIPAA disclosure. The receipt is handwritten. Maren pays in full with a cashier's check and asks for an itemized breakdown. Monica hesitates. Monica writes one on a purple sticky note. That evening, Maren photographs every document she has been given. The suspension letter, the referral agreement, the program brochure, the cashier's check receipt, the purple sticky note with the itemization. She uploads them to an encrypted folder on a state server she is authorized to access. She does not open an official case. She opens a preliminary review. She is careful. She has seen careers die on a misfiled subpoena. At the Department of Education Compliance bullpen the next morning, Maren logs in like it is any other Tuesday. She pulls the file for Bellhaven Elementary. She pulls the file for Clearwater Child Anxiety Solutions. She cross-references state provider licensing. Clearwater is not a licensed mental health provider in the state. It is registered as a sole proprietorship under Monica Velcourt's married name. Harriet's maiden name is on the county property records. She files a public records request under her own name as a parent, not under her agency credentials. She asks for the district's list of all approved behavioral support vendors, going back 5 years. She asks for every student referred to each vendor. She asks for every dollar flowed, every invoice, every reimbursement. She waits the required 10 business days. She does not tell anyone at her agency yet. The review stays preliminary. The paper trail stays civilian. Ivy attends 3 sessions at Clearwater. Monica runs her through worksheets labeled Bravery Ladder. She shows Ivy photos of snakes on a laptop. Ivy cries. Ivy comes home and paints a watercolor of a giraffe wearing a crown. Maren hangs it on the corkboard next to the laptop. Maren asks Ivy how the session was. Ivy says Tuesday had to look at pictures. Maren says Tuesday is very brave. Maren takes notes. At the state office, Maren keeps her day job. She audits a district 2 counties away. She helps a small rural board revise their intake protocol. She takes her lunch in the bullpen, eating a Tupperware of rice and stewed greens, reading the state statute on conflict of interest disclosures for school administrators. She underlines one sentence in pencil. She goes back to her regular caseload. She is not in a hurry. At Bellhaven, Harriet takes a celebratory lunch with her sister-in-law Monica at a restaurant near the river. They order wine at noon. Harriet jokes about the quiet mother who paid without a complaint. Monica says the girl is a runny-nose special, 3 sessions and done, easy 4,000. They clink glasses. They do not notice the man at the bar with a legal pad. He is a freelance journalist Maren has not called yet. 10 business days pass. The records request lands on Maren's home doorstep in a brown envelope. 5 years of vendor data, 31 invoices tied to Clearwater Child Anxiety Solutions. All 31 students were funneled through Harriet Velcourt's referral signature. All 31 were children whose parents were single mothers, immigrants, or families on reduced lunch. Every referral followed a suspension. Every suspension had a non-standard cause. Maren spreads the documents across the oak table. She color codes them with her binder tabs. Yellow for suspensions, blue for referrals, red for payments, green for the families. By 1 in the morning, she has mapped the scheme. 31 referrals, $124,000 over 5 years. Every dollar paid to Monica Velcourt's LLC. Every referral routed through Harriet's signature. Every suspension documented by Colette, Maren, or 2 other compliant teachers. She crosses the room, checks on Ivy asleep with Tuesday tucked under her chin, closes the door, comes back, and writes the opening page of her internal memo. Subject: Systemic Referral Kickback Scheme, Bellhaven Elementary, Superintendent District 7. Recommended action: escalation to the Office of Inspector General, joint review with the Attorney General's Civil Rights Division. She does not send it yet. She saves it. She closes the laptop. She sleeps 3 hours. The next morning, she walks into her supervisor's office at the bullpen. Her supervisor is a tired woman named Gloria who has been in compliance for 26 years. Maren slides the envelope across the desk. She says there is a situation. She says her daughter was the entry point. She says she wants to hand the case off because of the conflict. Gloria reads 3 pages. Gloria says, "Oh, honey." Gloria picks up the phone. Gloria reassigns the case within the hour to a compliance team 3 counties away. She signs Maren off as the originating complainant. She signs Ivy's name as minor witness, initials only. She tells Maren to go home for the afternoon. She tells Maren not to contact anyone at Bellhaven ever, for any reason. Maren nods. Maren drives home. Maren does not go back to Bellhaven for the rest of the story. She does not need to. At Bellhaven Elementary, none of this is visible yet. Harriet Velcourt hosts a board breakfast in her office, tray of pastries on the side table, coffee and styrofoam. She tells the board chair she has handled the oil situation beautifully. She says sometimes firm boundaries are what a family needs. She says the child will be back in rotation in 2 weeks. She laughs at her own joke. The board chair laughs too. At Clearwater, Monica gets Ivy's final session on her calendar. She prints a completion certificate with a gold sticker. She plans to mail it with a 10% off coupon for sibling enrollment. She does not yet know that 4 other mothers have been contacted by state investigators in the last 24 hours. She does not yet know that one of those mothers saved every handwritten receipt for 3 years. The first investigator from the compliance office 3 counties over calls the mother of a 9-year-old boy who had been suspended in October for refusing to sit during music class. The boy's mother sits on the edge of her bed in the dark, fingers trembling around the phone, and says she has been waiting for somebody to notice. She has every receipt in a shoebox under her dresser. She has a voicemail from Harriet she never deleted. Another mother, an immigrant from Nigeria with a daughter in 3rd grade, keeps every email Harriet sent in a folder labeled school problems. She forwards all of them to the investigator the same night. She does not sleep. She makes jollof rice at midnight and feeds it to her daughter the next morning with a shaking smile. I say, and says everything will be okay now, in a way that makes the child stop asking why mama cried. Within 9 days, the state compliance team has interviewed 7 families. All 7 tell the same story. Suspension for a small infraction. Principal demands enrollment in Clearwater. No other options offered. Harriet's signature on every referral. Monica's name on every receipt. The team builds a case summary for the Office of Inspector General. The case summary includes Ivy Oyalaran as patient 0. The case summary does not include Maren's name anywhere except in the originating complaint index. At home, Ivy starts to speak more again. She stops asking if Tuesday is okay every night. She paints a watercolor of a snake in a cage with a sign that says "Go away" and tapes it to the fridge. Maren does not take it down. She does not comment on it either. She makes Ivy a grilled cheese with tomato slices cut into hearts. She says Tuesday is magnificent. Ivy smiles for the first time in 11 days. The state team subpoenas Clearwater's bank records on a Wednesday. On Thursday, Monica Velcourt calls her sister-in-law from the strip mall parking lot. She says people from the state came in with badges. She says they took the filing cabinet and the computer tower. Harriet tells her to calm down. Harriet says she will call the district attorney, who is a friend. The district attorney does not pick up. On Friday, the superintendent of District 7 sits in a video call with the Office of Inspector General. He is shown the full case summary. 31 students, 5 years, $124,000. Harriet's signature is highlighted in yellow. By the end of the call, he looks 10 years older. He says he had no idea. He probably didn't. Harriet was a popular principal. She raised the test scores. She chaired the fall gala. On Monday morning, Harriet Velcourt arrives at Bellhaven to find 2 men from the Office of Inspector General in the front office. A district attorney's investigator with them. They do not raise their voices. They show her a printed letter. They say her access to the building is suspended pending review. They escort her to her car. The secretary, a woman named Renata who has worked under Harriet for 9 years, does not look up from her keyboard once. Harriet sits in her sedan in the parking lot for 19 minutes. She does not turn the engine on. She watches the magnolia in the courtyard through the windshield. She watches the children she still thinks of as hers line up for PE. A kindergarten aide looks over, recognizes her, and immediately looks away. Harriet feels the first real cold climb into her chest. She has never in 11 years been the one looked away from. The story breaks on local news Wednesday evening. Principal placed on administrative leave. Referral scheme under state investigation. No names of families, only initials. Ivy's case is referenced as the patient 0 complaint. A neighbor of Harriet's sees the story while eating dinner, turns to her husband, and says she always thought that woman was a little too polished. The husband asks what they did about it. She says nothing. He finishes his pasta. At the state office, Maren watches the news clip on her phone at her desk. Gloria walks by, sets a cup of tea on her blotter, and keeps walking. She does not say a word. Maren does not say a word either. The tea is chamomile. Maren drinks it slowly. The tea is the only comment exchanged. It is enough. At home, Harriet sits at her kitchen table in her own house, alone. Her husband is at a golf trip he has not returned from. Her adult daughter stopped picking up 2 days ago. Her phone rings with 3 numbers she does not recognize. None of them are friends. All of them are local media. She watches the phone go to voicemail. She watches it again. She does not eat dinner. At Clearwater, Monica returns to a storefront that is now sealed with an orange notice from the state attorney general's office. Her keys do not fit anymore. The tanning salon owner next door is outside smoking a cigarette and tells her quietly that 2 vans came this morning. Monica does not even ask what she should do next. She gets back in her sedan. She calls Harriet. Harriet does not pick up. Ivy returns to school, but not Bellhaven. Maren has enrolled her in a small charter across town, where her cousin also attends. On her first morning, Ivy wears a new green cardigan. She carries Tuesday. Her new teacher, a soft-spoken man with a beard named Mr. Ahern, kneels to her eye level and asks her the name of her stuffed friend. She tells him. He says Tuesday is welcome to visit whenever she likes. Ivy decides she likes him. Colette Maren, the first-grade teacher, is placed on administrative leave the same week. A substitute runs her classroom. The children notice but do not say much. One small boy asks the sub where Miss Maren is. The sub says Miss Maren is taking some time. The boy says, "Oh, okay," and goes back to his worksheet. That is the extent of the grief in her classroom, and that should tell her something. Colette sits in her studio apartment 3 miles from the school. Her union rep tells her on a call that the teachers' union cannot defend discriminatory discipline practices documented in writing. She hangs up. She opens her email. She finds 11 parent emails in her work inbox she once dismissed as overreactions. She reads them all the way through for the first time in her career. She closes the laptop. She does not cry. She stares. The Attorney General's office files formal charges 11 weeks later. Harriet Velcourt is indicted for conspiracy to defraud, misuse of public office, and child endangerment through coercive referral. Monica Velcourt is indicted for practicing mental health therapy without licensure and for theft by deception. Colette Maren is not criminally charged, but she is terminated for cause, and her teaching credential is suspended for a minimum of 3 years. At the oak kitchen table, Maren reads the indictment on her laptop. Ivy sits across from her painting. Maren closes the laptop. She pours 2 glasses of apple juice. She gives one to Ivy. They clink the rims together. Ivy asks what they are celebrating. Maren says, "A magnificent Tuesday." Ivy laughs. Tuesday, the giraffe is on the table next to the paint water. The watercolor going up is a giraffe in a crown on a hill. Harriet's home goes up for sale at 95 days. Her husband does not return from the golf trip in any meaningful sense. He files for legal separation citing irreconcilable differences. Her adult daughter posts a public statement on social media distancing herself from her mother's professional conduct. Harriet reads the post in a rented 1-bedroom unit across town. She reads it 3 times. She blocks her daughter, then she unblocks her, then she blocks her again. The grocery store near her old home becomes unusable for her. A woman in aisle 4 pushes past her cart without making eye contact. A father with 2 children at the deli counter turns his body so his kids cannot see her. A clerk she used to greet by name looks through her at checkout and just says the total. Harriet pays in cash. Harriet starts driving 40 minutes to shop at a store where nobody recognizes her. The Bellhaven magnolia blooms in the courtyard on the first warm Saturday of April. None of the children there that day know who Harriet Velcourt is. The interim principal, a woman from 2 districts over, has already changed the name on the front office. Kids run past the tree in shouts. Teachers monitor from benches. The weather is beautiful. The school is fine. The school, it turns out, was always going to be fine without her. Monica Velcourt takes a plea deal to avoid jail. 5 years probation. Full restitution to every affected family. Permanent surrender of her LMFT credential. She moves in with her elderly mother in a town 200 miles away. She gets a job at a garden supply store. She wears a green apron and rings up seed packets. On her 3rd week, a customer looks at her a beat too long, and Monica knows. Monica learns to look at the scanner. Colette Maren takes down her teacher portfolio website. She tries substitute work in a neighboring district, but her name is in the court filings. She is let go after 2 weeks. She moves in with her mother. She works as a barista at a chain coffee shop. Her regulars never ask her last name. She stops posting online entirely. The Brave Moments jar she kept on her classroom desk ends up in a box in her mother's garage unopened. Ivy's 1st grade year closes out at her new charter. Her report card is a simple narrative paragraph from Mr. Ahern. He writes that Ivy is attentive, kind, and brave in quiet ways. He writes that she is a thoughtful friend who watches out for the shyer children in the class. He writes that her watercolors bring joy to the classroom wall every week. Maren reads it 3 times. Maren tapes it to the corkboard in the kitchen. The state legislature holds a hearing on referral kickbacks in public schools 6 months later. The case of 31 children at Bellhaven Elementary is cited by name as the reason for proposed reforms. Maren does not testify. She sends a written statement. She signs it with her full title. The statement is read aloud by the committee chair. The chair says the author's 6-year-old daughter is the reason this hearing is happening at all. Harriet Velcourt, at her sentencing, reads a prepared statement from her attorney. She says she is deeply sorry for the harm. She uses the word harm twice. She does not use the word children once. The judge, a woman named Ayana Iwuchukwu, looks at her over her glasses and pauses for a full 10 seconds before responding. That silence is longer than Harriet's statement. It shows up in 3 reporters' notebooks. Harriet is sentenced to 22 months in state custody, followed by 3 years of supervised release. She is ordered to pay restitution jointly with Monica. Her educator credential is permanently revoked. She will never work in a school again. She will never sign another referral. She will never chair another fall gala. The judge says for the record that this is the kind of harm that quietly shapes children for the rest of their lives. The courtroom nods. She is transported to a minimum security correctional facility 3 hours from her old neighborhood. Her intake photo shows a woman without a lacquered bob. Her hair hangs loose and shows more gray than she ever let anyone see. The jumpsuit is a dull blue. The mayoral handshake photo is in a storage unit paid for by her daughter, who still refuses to speak with her. The photo will stay in the storage unit for a long time. 7 months into her sentence, Harriet is granted limited phone privileges. She calls a single number. She calls Maren at the compliance office. The call is logged. The call is recorded. Harriet speaks for 90 seconds. She says she did not understand what she had been doing. She says she hopes Ivy is okay. She asks for a chance to apologize in writing through the warden's office. She waits. The line hums. Maren listens without interrupting. She writes nothing. She records the call only in the system's automatic log. When Harriet finishes, Maren says very softly that she will not be accepting any further communication from Harriet in any form at any time. She says her office has a record of this call and will share it with Harriet's supervising officer. She wishes Harriet a productive sentence. She hangs up first. She does not shake. Harriet returns to her cell block. She sits on the edge of the thin mattress with her hands loose in her lap. She waits for an apology to be accepted. It is not accepted. The silence stretches past lights out. The silence stretches past dawn. The silence is still stretching. It will keep stretching. It is the only answer she is ever going to receive. It is the exact answer she designed by how she spoke to a 6-year-old. Maren closes the call log. She refills her chamomile from the break room. She sits back down at her desk. On her monitor is a new case assignment from Gloria, a rural district 200 miles east, accused of steering referrals to a private tutoring company owned by a school board member's niece. Maren opens the folder. She clicks the first document. She begins to read. She does not think about Harriet again that afternoon. That evening, she picks Ivy up from the charter. Ivy runs to the car holding up a watercolor of a giraffe wearing glasses. Ivy says it is a scientist giraffe. She says scientists find things out. Maren laughs from her belly, the first real belly laugh in weeks, and tells her daughter scientists are magnificent. They drive home along streets lit pink by a spring sunset. At home, Maren makes pasta. Ivy sets the table. They eat at the round oak table. Ivy tells Maren about a boy in her class who was afraid of the slide and how she sat with him at the top until he was ready. Maren listens like it is the most important briefing of her week. The watercolor of the caged snake has been moved to a bottom corner. Colette drops a latte behind the coffee counter on a Friday morning rush. Her manager sighs loudly. A customer mutters about needing to get to work. Colette apologizes in the bright, practiced way she used to in her classroom. Nobody responds. Nobody notices the apology was professional quality. She mops up the milk. Her voice, when she calls the next order, does not carry the way it once did. Monica stays at the garden supply store. She becomes quietly competent at identifying perennials. A regular asks her once if she ever worked somewhere else. She says she used to work in offices. The regular nods and asks about the lavender. Monica goes home every night to her mother's guest room. She learns that she likes lavender. This is the only life she has now. 9 months after the sentencing, Maren is asked to train new compliance investigators. She accepts. She stands in front of a room of 15 people, projector showing the first slide. The slide reads, simply, a pattern is not a pattern until you have counted it twice. She does not mention Bellhaven by name. She mentions a single case involving a 6-year-old and a snake. The room is very quiet. The trainees take notes. One young woman in the front row asks how Maren knew, on the first day, that something was wrong. Maren says plainly that a principal who demands a parent pay $4,000 before a 6-year-old can come back to first grade is a principal who has done this before. She says the job is to find the other 30 families. The young woman underlines the sentence twice. Maren moves on to slide 2. On the anniversary of the wildlife visit, Maren does not bring it up. Ivy, now 7, does not either. They go to the zoo, the real one. On a Saturday, Ivy asks to see the giraffes. She does not ask to see the snakes. They eat hot dogs on a bench near the lion habitat. Tuesday is in Ivy's lap. The giraffes lope across their enclosure. Ivy watches with the same quiet focus her mother uses on a document. On the drive home from the zoo, Ivy falls asleep in her booster seat. Tuesday slips from her hand to the car floor. Maren glances at her in the rear view, signals, takes the long way home along the river road. The afternoon is gold. The trees are new green. Maren thinks, for the first time in a long time, of Harriet's voice on the phone and lets the thought pass through. In the rented one-bedroom, long after her release, Harriet sits in the same spot on the same mattress and watches the same street lamp through the same blinds. She is not rehired. She is not forgiven. Her daughter does not answer. The handshake photo stays in storage until the unit goes to auction. Someone who does not know who she is throws it out. The neighbors in her new complex know her story because everyone has a phone and everyone has 7 minutes. They nod in the hallway because they are polite. They do not invite her to anything. There are no barbecues. Her loneliness is not cinematic. It is administrative. She goes days without anyone saying her name out loud in her hearing. Maren Bay, at her desk in the compliance bullpen in the years that follow, keeps a small watercolor pinned above her monitor. A giraffe wearing a crown on a hill, a yellow ribbon around its neck. In the bottom corner, a child's deliberate handwriting reads magnificent. She looks at it once each morning. It outlasts 3 monitors, 2 supervisors, and every case file that crosses her desk. Ivy, now a teenager, asks her mother what happened to that school. Maren tells her plainly that the principal went to prison and the teacher lost her credential. Ivy is quiet for a minute. Then she asks if it was because of her. Maren says it was because of 30 other children nobody knew about until her. Ivy decides she is okay with the answer, and the stuffed giraffe named Tuesday sits on a shelf in Ivy's bedroom long after she has outgrown it. Velvet worn thin at the nose, one ear loose, yellow ribbon faded to cream. Below it is a framed watercolor, the first Ivy made after the wildlife visit. A small giraffe in a crown on a green hill. The caption, in pencil, reads simply, magnificent.